and welcome. This is Very Rare Smith, Land of Forbidden Library, and today it's the last reading stream of the year. 'Twas the reading stream before Christmas, and the heights were still wuthering. And who knows how long any of these characters will last, and how quickly they will be destroyed in their own sins. What? Hello, you are still a member Novel Science Fandom? Holy shit. You're on a silver book, which means you've been a member for nearly... There's one more book left. The gold book, which is the 6 months, I believe. So you've nearly been a member for half a year. Half a year? That's a long time. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. But hello! Hello, hello, Candy Guy. Continue the tale of a man who is the physical embodiment of a Limp Bizkit's break stuff. He really is, and I can't help but feel like now he can't have Catherine. It's somehow worse. Like, maybe the few scruples he has have gone. But let's see if I can somewhat attempt to recap us to the point that at least this section. If you're wondering what I have this you can't see it, but I'm holding a random, like, wooden dowel. It came with a picture. We got this picture for Christmas, for a Christmas decoration. It's like a little robin on a watering can, and it's all snowy and cute, and it lights up. You got there's a little switch on the side of the painting which lights up the sky in the painting, and it's so cool. But it came with this random bit of dowel in the packaging, and now I can't stop fiddling with it. It's my emotional support dowel now. Anyway, I was gonna try explain, but you could see my hand moving. I feel like I need to explain these things. That I'm not just fidgeting for no reason. Even though I do that too. And it's kind of the fun of the 3D models, you get to see them. Anyway. Try to explain for at least having some context, because we are nearly 60% of the way through this book, so explaining all of it is not gonna work. What I can explain is that Heathcliff's a bastard. Potentially in the literal sense as well as the not a nice guy sense. Crikey, she's got an extra dimension, a whole extra dimension! Yeah, I do on Sundays, because I get to gesture on Sundays with my invisible dowel that you cannot see, but I have. I swear it's real. Anyway, so the context I can give you is Heathcliff's wife had a baba, but she ran away with the baba. But now she died, so the baba she wanted the baba to go to her brother in Thrushcross Grange. But as soon as Heathcliff found out that the baba was there, he was like, give me my child. And he's the father. Like, nothing they can say will really change the claim he has on him. So, unfortunately, they're gonna have to take the baba up to Wuthering Heights. Meanwhile, Heathcliff had a big fancy on a lady called Catherine, who they were both crazy and absolutely deserved each other, but did not go together. She ended up marrying the father, the brother, who lived at Thrushcross Grange and lived there, and eventually died herself. But she also left a baba, a miniature Catherine, who is ever so slightly less insane than her mother, which is great. However, she is incredibly sheltered and does not know the chaos at the house next door, Wuthering Heights. Talking about the scruples of a man who wanted to rip out the heart of his lover's husband and drink his blood. Yeah, that is what we're talking about. The people at Wuthering Heights would be Heathcliff, the bastard himself, Joseph, old servant who is too stubborn to quit, Hareton. Hareton is the son of the original owner of the house, who has basically been a servant the whole time, whether he likes it or not, though he technically has rights to the house. I think that's all. Oh, and 2 Yorkshire donkeys. Yes. Whenever Joseph comes into the scene, we cringe because then I have to put on a big thick Yorkshire accent, and I ain't from Yorkshire. I don't know how to do that. I ain't good at accents. I have my own, and that's it. There we go. Okay, that's the best context I can give you without going through the whole book, because I don't want it. There's a lot. There's so much shit to happen. That should be enough context for this part of the book. So without further ado, Chapter 20. To obviate the danger of this threat being fulfilled, Mr. Linton commissioned me to take the boy home early on Catherine's pony, and, he said, as we shall have no influence over his destiny, good or bad, you must say nothing on where he is gone to my daughter. She cannot associate with him hereafter, and it is better for her to remain in ignorance of his proximity, lest she should be restless and anxious to visit the Heights. Merely tell her his father sent for him suddenly, and he has been obliged to leave us. Oh yeah, because he's trying to keep his little baby girl away from the Wuthering Heights, because, you know what? That makes sense. Everyone at the Wuthering Heights is kind of mad, really. Linton was very reluctant to be roused from his bed at 5 o'clock, and astonished to be informed that he must prepare for further travelling, but I softened off the matter by stating that he was going to spend some time with his father, Mr. Heathcliff, who wished to see him so much. He did not like to defer the pleasure till he should recover from his late journey. My father? He cried, in strange perplexity. Mama told me I had a father. Mama never told me I had a father. Where does he live? I'd rather stay with my uncle. He lives a little distance from the Grange, I replied, just beyond those hills, not so far. But you may walk over here when you get hearty, and you should be glad to go home and to see him. You must try to love him, as you did your mother, and then he will love you. Nelly, this is a lie, and you know this. Nelly, no. What? Oh, Boris. Hold my tea, I'm going to Wuthering Heights. No, you should not go to Wuthering Heights, Boris. Do not go to Wuthering Heights. It is a bad place to be. And Nelly is straight up lying to this town. But thank you so much for 5 months membership. That's incredibly bold that you would like to support me that long. I really appreciate it. I do. Thank you. And then he will love you. He will not love you. But why have I not heard of him before? Asked Linton. Why didn't Mama and he live together, as other people do? He had business to keep him in the north, I answered, and your mother's health required her to reside in the south. And why didn't Mama speak to me about him? Persevered the child. She often talked of Uncle, and I learnt to love him long ago. How am I to love Papa? I don't know him. Wuthering Heights, the Detroit Victorian Gothic novels. Oh, all children love their parents, I said. Your mother perhaps thought she would want to be with him if she mentioned him too often to you. Let us make haste. An early ride on such a beautiful morning is much preferable to an hour's more sleep. Is she to go with us? He demanded. The little girl I saw yesterday. Not now, replied I. Is Uncle? He continued. No, I shall be your companion there, I said. Linton sank back on his pillow and fell into a brown study. Brown study. What's a brown study? I won't go without Uncle, he cried at length. I can't tell where you mean to take me. Oh, sweet boy. To be fair, he's got a good head on his shoulders. I don't know you. I won't go anywhere with a stranger. Correct, child. Correct. I looked back and I've been a fan of your content for like a year and a half, getting close to goddamn. Yeah, strung you along that long. I'll keep going. Many years later, still here. I attempted to persuade him of his naughtiness of showing reluctance to meet his father. Still, he obstinately resisted any progress towards dressing, and I had to call for my master's assistance in coaxing him out of bed. Different model? Yeah, just a little Christmas treat. I like to do the 3D ones on the Sunday because I don't have to type. I don't have to sit there with a controller all the time, so I can gesture all I want. The poor thing was finally got off, with several delusive assurances that his absence should be short. They are straight up lying to this child. That Mr. Edgar and Kathy would visit him, and other promises equally ill-founded, which I invented and reiterated at intervals throughout the way. The pure heather-scented air, the bright sunshine, the gentle canter of Minnie, relieved his despondency after a while. He began to put questions concerning his new home and its inhabitants with great interest and liveliness. I remember having first come here thanks to your Frankenstein reading stream, and now I hear for Wuthering Heights. Wonderful! Frankenstein would have been October? So you actually haven't been here that long. Is Wuthering Heights a pleasant place? As pleasant a place as Thrushcross Grange? Oh my god. No, it is not. He inquired, turning to take a glance into the valley, whence a light mist mounted and forced a fleecy cloud on the skirts of the blue. It is not so buried in trees, I replied, and it is not quite so large, but you can see the country beautifully all around, and the air is healthier for you, fresher and drier. You will, perhaps, think the building old and dark at first, though it is a respectable house, the next best in the neighbourhood, and you will have such nice rambles on the moors. Hareton Earnshaw, that is, Miss Cathy's older cousin, and so yours in a manner, will show you all the sweetest spots, and you can bring a book in fine weather, and make a green hollow your study. And now and then, your uncle may join you in a walk. He does frequently walk out on the hills. And what is my father like? That was so diplomatically handled from Nelly there. Oh, the surroundings are great. And Hareton's not the worst. Nelly and Edgar, don't worry, the scary man won't eat you. Heathcliff holding a knife and fork and lipping his lip. Yeah. Next best in the neighbourhood. Nelly, there are literally 2 houses. She's not wrong though. And what is my father like, he asked. Is he as young and handsome as uncle? He's as young, said I, but he has black hair and eyes, and looks sterner, and he is taller and bigger altogether. He'll not seem to you so gentle and kind at first, perhaps because it is not his way. Still, mind you, be frank and cordial with him, and naturally he'll be fonder of you than any uncle of you, for you are his own. Oh, Nelly, so diplomatic. Black hair and eyes, mused Linton. I can't fancy him. And I Then, I am not like him, am I? Not much, I answered. Not a morsel, I thought, surveying with regret the white complexion and slim frame of my companion, and his large, languid eyes. His mother's eyes, save that, unless a morbid touchiness kindled them at a moment, they had not a vestige of her sparkling spirit. At the beginning of the road leading to a distant place, you see a makeshift barricade blocking the way. And they tell you, we don't go to Wuthering Heights. This is diplomacy, the same way I used to say my mum that aliens totally broke her expensive face, not me, honest. Kind of is. This is straight up lying. Straight up lying. How strange that he should never come to see Mama and me, he murmured. Has he ever seen me? If he has, I must have been a baby. I remember not a single thing about him. Why, Master Linton, said I, 300 miles is a great distance, and 10 years seems very different in length to a grown-up person compared with what they do to you. It is probable Mr. Heathcliff proposed going from summer to summer, but never found a convenient opportunity. And now it is too late. Don't trouble him with questions on the subject. It will disturb him, for no good. The boy was fully occupied with his own cogitations for the remainder of the ride, till we halted before the farmhouse garden gate. I watched to catch his impression in his countenance. He surveyed the carved front and low burrowed lattices. He straggled the straggling gooseberry bushes and crooked firs with solemn intentness, and then shook his head. His private feelings entirely disapproved of the exterior of his new abode, but he had sense to postpone complaining. There might be compensation within. Before he dismounted, I went and opened the door. It was 6:30. The family had just finished breakfast. The servant was clearing and wiping down the table. Joseph stood by his master's chair, telling some tale concerning a lame horse, and Hareton was preparing for the hayfield. "Hello, Nellie!" Hello, Nellie. That's very strange from Mr. Heathcliff. That hello is so friendly in my head, and Heathcliff is not. Said Mr. Heathcliff when he saw me. I feared I should have to come down and fetch my property myself. You brought it, haven't you? It. Oh, this poor child. Let us see what we can make of it. He got up and strode to the door, Hareton and Joseph following in gaping curiosity. Poor Linton ran a frightened eye over the faces of the three. Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah, that fixed it real fast. Surely, said Joseph after a grave inspection, he's swapped ye master with on his lass. We ye my meister on his lass. Fucking Joseph, bro. Heathcliff, having stared his son into an argue of confusion, uttered a scornful laugh. God, what a beauty, what a lovely, charming thing, he exclaimed. Haven't they reared it on sails and sour milk, Nellie? Oh, damn my soul, but that's worse than I expected. And the devil knows I was not sanguine. I bid the trembling and bewildered child get down and enter. He did not thoroughly comprehend the meaning of his father's speech, or whether it were intended for him. Indeed, he was not certain that the grim, sneering stranger was his father, but he clung to me with growing trepidation, and on Heathcliff's taking his seat and bidding him come hither, he hid his face on my shoulder and wept. Oh my God! This poor child! Just one one interaction with Heathcliff and he's already clinging to Nellie and crying. I would too, to be honest. And not even as a child. As a 30-year-old woman, I think I too would be crying into Nellie if I ever met Heathcliff. Typical reaction to Heathcliff. Correct reaction. Tut, tut, said Heathcliff, stretching out a hand and dragging him roughly between his knees, and then holding up his head by the chin. None of that nonsense. We're not going to hurt thee. Linton, isn't that thy name? Thou art thy mother's child entirely. Where is my share in thee? Pulling chicken? Heathcliff has negative charisma. You really do. Actually, the typical reaction to Heathcliff is either crying in terror or going, oh, he's so dark and brooding and hot. Yeah. And Isabella was the only one who had that reaction so far. He took off the boy's cap and pushed back his thick flaxen curls, felt his slender arms and his small fingers, during which examination Linton ceased crying and lifted his great blue eyes to inspect the inspector. Do you know me? Do you know me? Asked Heathcliff, having satisfied himself that the limbs were all equally frail and feeble. No, said Linton with a graze of vacant fear. You've heard of me, I dare say. No, he replied again. No? What a shame of your mother never to waken your filial, like a morning star filial. Regard for me. You are my son, then. I'll tell you. And your mother was a wicked slut to leave you in ignorance of the sort of father you possessed. Now don't wince and colour up, though it is something to see you have not white blood. Be a good lad, and I'll do for you. Nellie, if you be tired, you may sit down. If not, get home again. I guess you'll report what you hear and see to the cipher at the Grange, and this thing won't be settled while you linger about it. Well, replied I hope you'll be kind to the boy, Mr. Heathcliff, and you'll not keep him long. And he's all you have akin in the wide world that you will ever know. Remember, I'll be very kind to him. You needn't fear, he said, laughing. Only nobody else must be kind to him. I'm jealous of monopolizing his affection. And, to begin my kindness, Joseph, bring the lad some breakfast. Hareton, you infernal calf, begone to your work. Yes, now, he added, when he had departed, my son is prospective owner of your place, and I should not wish him to die till I was certain of being his successor. Besides, he's mine, and I want the triumph of seeing my descendant fairly lord of their estates, my child hiring their children till their father's lands for wages. That is the sole consideration which can make me endure the whelp. I despise him for himself, and hate him for the memories he revives, but that consideration is sufficient. He is safe with me, and shall be tended as carefully as your master tends his own. I have a room upstairs, furnished for him in handsome style. I've engaged a tutor, also to come 3 times a week from 20 miles distance, to teach him what he pleases to learn. I've ordered Hareton to obey him, and in fact I've arranged everything with a view to preserve the superior and the gentleman in him above his associates. I do not regard, however, that he so deserves little trouble. If I wished any blessing in the world, it was to find him a worthy object of pride, and I'm bitterly disappointed with the way-faced whiny wretch. Don't worry, Nellie. I won't hurt him. I hate his guts, but I'm going to make him into a weapon to take over the entire little lordliness. I don't know. God damn. He's just so miserable. The second one usually evolves into first or insane. Yes, it is. People learn. Let me just. While he was speaking, Joseph returned, bearing a basin of milk porridge, and placed it before Linton, who stirred round the homely mess with a look of aversion, and affirmed he could not eat it. I saw the old man servant shared largely his master's scorn of the child, though he was compelled to retain the sentiment in his heart, because Heathcliff plainly meant his underlings can hold him in honour. "Cannot eat it," repeated he. "Cannot eat it," repeated he. Yeah, okay. I couldn't tell who was talking until we got the next bit. Peering in Linton's face and subduing his voice to a whisper for fear of being overheard. "But Maister never ate naught else when he were little un. And what were good enough for him's good enough for ye. It's rather think." "I shan't eat it," answered Linton snappishly. "Take it away." Ah, this is his dad coming in. He's got a little bit of brattiness in him, and that's probably mostly his dad. Joseph snatched up the food indignantly and brought it to us. "Is that all that ails you with it? That ails the victuals?" Heathcliff reminds me of Marco in Arius from The Expanse. He hides his son from his mother and molds him in his image. He views his son as more than an extension of him rather than an individual. Correct. Wuthering Heights remind me of that line from Hamlet episode of Mystery Science Theatre. "This place needs a tree or a shrub. Hell, even a stick would cheer up." Correct. He needed his revenge for his mother leaving him after tricking her into blowing up a ship. That's a hell of a thing. "What should ail them?" he said. "Wah!" answered Joseph. "Yon dainty chap says he cannot eat 'em. But I guess in's right. His mother were just sore where we were a moot too mucky, and so took corn for making her bread." "Don't mention his mother to me," said the master angrily. "Get him something he can eat, that's all. What is his usual food, Nelly?" I suggested boiled milk or tea, and the housekeeper received instructions to prepare some. "Hello, Jobber, welcome." Come, I reflected. His father's selfishness may contribute to his comfort. He perceives his delicate constitution and the necessity of treating him tolerably. I'll console Mr. Edgar by acquainting him with the turn Heathcliff's humour has taken. Having no excuse for lingering longer, I stepped out while Linton was engaged in timidly rebuffing the advances of a friendly sheepdog. But he was too much on the alert to be cheated. As I closed the door, I heard a cry, and a frantic repetition of the words, "Don't leave me! I'll not stay here! I'll not stay here! Oh, child, I'm so sorry!" Then the latch was raised and fell. They did not suffer him to come forth. I mounted Minnie and urged her to a trot, and so my brief guardianship ended. Poor kid! Oh my god. Condemned to Wuthering Heights. Chapter 21. We had sad work with little Cathy that day. She rose in high glee, eager to join her cousin, and such passionate tears and lamentations followed the news of his departure that Edgar himself was obliged to soothe her, by affirming he should come back soon. He added, however, if I can get him, and there were no hopes of that. His promise poorly pacified her, but time was more potent, and though still at intervals she inquired of her father when Linton would return, before she did see him again his features had waxed so dim in her memory that she did not recognize him. That makes sense. Poor kid stuck at Wuthering Heights, and he has Heathcliff as a dad. I know! He was cursed the moment he was born, with Heathcliff as a father. When I chanced to encounter the housekeeper of Wuthering Heights in paying business visits to Gimmerton, I used to ask how the young master got on, for he lived almost as secluded as Catherine herself, and was never seen. I could gather from her that he continued in weak health, and was a tiresome inmate. She said Mr. Heathcliff seemed to dislike him even longer and worse, though he took some trouble to conceal it. He had an antipathy to the sound of his voice, and could not do at all with his sitting in the same room with him many minutes together. I will raise him as another version of me, but I can't stand to be around him, so problem. There seldom passed much talk between them. Linton learned his lessons and spent his evenings in a small apartment they called the parlour, or else lay in bed all day, for he was constantly getting coughs and colds and aches and pains of some sort. And I never knew such a faint-hearted creature, added the woman, nor one so careful of his hisling. He will go on, if I leave the window open a little bit late in the evening. Oh, it's killing, a breath of night air, and he must have a fire in the middle of summer, and Joseph's tobacco pipes is poison, and he must always have sweets and dainties, and always milk forever, heeding naught how the rest of us are pinched in winter. And there he'll sit, wrapped in his furred cloak, in his chair by the fire, with some toast and water on the or other slop on the hob to sip at. And if Hareton, for pity, comes to amuse him, Hareton is not bad-natured, though he's rough. There's sure to be part, one swearing and the other crying. I believe the master would relish Earnshaw's thrashing him into a mummy, if he were not his son, and I'm certain he would fit to turn him outdoors, if he knew half the nursing he gives Heslin. Hi, Crusader! Welcome! She just described you! But then he won't go into danger of temptation. He never enters the parlour, and should Linton show those ways in the house where he is, he sends him upstairs directly. I divined from this account that utter lack of sympathy had rendered young Heathcliff selfish and disagreeable, if he were not so originally, and my interest in him consequently decayed. Sounds like a little shit, and I'm not missing out on anything. Though still, I was moved with a sense of grief at his lot, and I wish that he had been left with us. Mr. Edgeworth encouraged me to gain information, though he thought a great deal about him, I fancy, and would have run some risk to see him, and he told me once to ask the housekeeper whether he ever came to the village. She said he'd only been twice on horseback accompanying his father, and both times he pretended to be quite knocked up, for 3 or 4 days afterwards. That housekeeper left, and I recollected rightly 2 years after he came, and another whom I did not know was her successor. She lives there still. Time wore on to the Grange in its former pleasant way till Miss Cathy reached 16. On the anniversary of her birth, where we never manifested any signs of rejoicing, because it was also the anniversary of my late mistress's death. Her father invariably spent that day alone in the library, and walked at dusk as far as Gimmerton Kirkyard, where he would frequently prolong his stay beyond midnight. Therefore, Catherine was thrown on her own recourses for amusement. This 20th of March was a beautiful spring day, and when her father retired, my young lady came down, dressed for going out, and said she asked to have a ramble on the edge of the moor with me. Mr. Linton had given her leave, if we went only a short distance and were back within the hour. "So make haste, Ellen," she cried. "I know where I wish to go, where a colony of moor game are settled. I want to see whether they have made their nest yet." "That must be a good distance," I answered. "They don't breed on the edge of the moor." "No, it's not," she said. "I've gone very near with Papa." I put on my bonnet and sailed out, thinking nothing more of the matter. She bounded before me and returned to my side, and was off again like a young greyhound. And at first I found plenty of entertainment in listening to the larks singing far and near, and enjoying the sweet warm sunshine, and watching her, my pet and my delight, with her golden ringlets flying loose behind her, and her bright cheek as soft and pure as its bloom as a wild rose, and her eyes radiant and with cloudless pleasure. She was a happy creature, and an angel in those days. It's a pity she could not be content. I mean, it was only a matter of time, wasn't it? She's 16. There's no way she's going to keep cooped up forever. "Well," said I, "where are your moor game, Miss Cathy? We should be at them. The Grange Park fence is a great way off now." "Oh, a little further, only a little further, Ellen," was her answer continually. "Climb up that hillock past the bank, and by the time you reach the other side, I shall have raised the birds." But there were so many hillocks and banks to climb and pass that at length I began to be weary, and told her that we must halt and retrace our steps. I shouted to her as she outstripped me a long way. She either did not hear or did not regard, for she still sprang on, and I was compelled to follow. Finally, she dived into a hollow, and before I came in sight of her again, she was 2 miles nearer Wuthering Heights than her own home, and I beheld a couple of persons arrest her, one of whom I felt convinced was Mr. Heathcliff himself. Cathy had been caught in the fact of plundering, or at least hunting out of the nests of the grouse. The heights were Heathcliff's land, and he was reproving the poacher. "I've neither taken nor found any," said she. I toiled to them, expanding her hands in corroboration of the statement. "I didn't mean to take them, but Papa told me there were quantities up here. I wish to see the eggs." Heathcliff glanced at me with an ill-meaning smile, expressing his acquaintance with the party, and consequently his malevolence towards it, and demanded who Papa was. Uh-oh. "Mr. Linton of Thrushcross Grange," she replied. I thought you did not know me, or you wouldn't have spoken that way." "You suppose Papa is highly esteemed and respected, then?" he said sarcastically. And what are you? Inquired Catherine, gazing curiously on the speaker. What man? That man I've seen before, is he your son? She pointed to Hareton, the other individual, who had gained nothing but increased bulk and strength by the addition of 2 years to his age. He seemed as awkward and rough as ever. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Miss Cathy, I interrupted, it will be 3 hours instead of 1 that we are out presently. We really must go back. No, that man is not my son, answered Heathcliff, pushing me aside. But I have one, and you have seen him before, and, though your nurse is in a hurry, I think both you and she would be the better for a little rest. Will you just turn this nab of Heath and walk into my house? I'll get home earlier for the ease, and you shall receive a kinder welcome. Heathcliff! I like that Hareton's this big, bulky hunk of a man who's awkward, also awkward and gooseberry. I'm not surprised, but considering what this boy dealt with growing up, that he's an awkward duck. I whispered Catherine that she mustn't, on any account, accede to the proposal. It was entirely out of the question. Why? She asked aloud. I'm tired of running, and the ground is dewy. I can't sit here. Let us go, Ellen. Catherine! Oh, no. Besides, he says I have seen his son. He's mistaken, I think. But I guess where he lives, at the farmhouse I visited in coming from Pennystone Crags, don't you? The most common Wuthering Heights reaction. Heathcliff! Second most common. Catherine! I do, come. Nellie, hold your tongue. It will be a treat for her to look in on us. Hareton, get forwards with the lass. You shall walk with me, Nellie. Second most common. Catherine! Catherine 1 or Catherine 2? We don't know. Even Catherine dying hasn't stopped the Catherine! Yeah! We'll never be without Catherine! No, she's not going to any such place, I cried, struggling to release my arm, which he had seized. But she was almost at the door-stones already, scampering round the burrow at full speed. Her appointed companion did not pretend to escort her. He shied off by the roadside and vanished. Mr. Heathcliff, it's very wrong, I continued. You know you mean no good. And there she'll see Linton, and all will be told as soon as ever we return. And I shall have the blame. Heathcliff, stop putting me in things. I want her to see Linton, he answered. He's looking better these few days. It's not often he's fit to be seen, and we'll soon persuade her to keep the visit secret. Where's the harm in it? The harm of it is that her father would hate me if he found out I suffered her to enter your house, and I am convinced you have a bad design in encouraging her to do so, I replied. My design is as honest as possible. I'll inform you of its whole scope, he said, that the 2 cousins may fall in love and get married. I'm acting generously to your master. His young chit has no expectations, and should she second my wishes, she'll be provided for at once as joint successor with Linton. Oh God. I forget with my modern sensibilities that cousins marrying is absolutely fine at these times. It is not a good design, but this explains his whole I will be in charge of Thrushcrosh Grange. Ha ha ha. So this is This is Mrs. Heathcliff from the future, so the baby Catherine is the Mrs. Heathcliff? Potentially, if his plan goes to fruition. If Linton died, I answered, and his life is quite uncertain, Catherine would be the heir. No, she would not, he said. There is no clause in the will to secure it, so his property would go to me. But to prevent disputes, I desire their union, and am resolved to bring it about. I am acting generously in my single-minded pursuit to gain complete control of all land here, just to take petty revenge on everyone I disliked, which is literally everyone. Yeah. And I will use my very child to do it. And the child of my lover. And I'm resolved that she shall never approach your house with me again. I returned as we reached the gate, where Miss Cathy waited our coming. Heathcliff bade me be quiet, and preceding us up the path, hastened to open the door. My young lady gave him several looks, as if she could not exactly make up her mind what to think of him. But now he smiled when he met her eye, and softened his voice in addressing her. And I was foolish enough to imagine the memory of her mother might disarm him for desiring her injury. Linton stood on the hearth. He had been walking out in the fields, for his cap was on, and he was calling to Joseph to bring him dry shoes. He had grown tall for his age, still wanting some months of 16. His features were pretty yet, and his eye and complexion brighter than I remembered them, though with merely temporary lustre borrowed from the sublurious air and genial sun. I couldn't be with the woman I loved. Now I'll make it everyone's problem, yes. And I have no moral fault in this, because they hurt me first. I'm a genius, yeah. Heathcliff, he is a genius. Now, who is that? Asked Mr. Heathcliff, turning to Cathy. Can you tell? Your son, she said, having doubtfully surveyed first one and then the other. Yes, yes, answered he. But is this the only time you beheld him? Think. Ah, you must have a short memory. Linton, don't you recall your cousin that you used to tease us so with wishing to see? What? Linton? Cathy cried Cathy, kindling into joyful surprise at the name. Is that little Linton? He's taller than I am. Are you Linton? The youth stepped forward and acknowledged himself. She kissed him fervently, and they gazed with wonder at the change time had wrought in the appearance of each. Catherine had reached her full height. Her figure was both plump and slender, elastic as steel, and her whole aspect sparkling with health and spirits. Linton's looks and movements were very languid, and his form extremely slight. But there was a grace in his manner that mitigated these defects, and rendered him not unpleasing. After exchanging numerous marks of fondness with him, his cousin went to Mr. Heathcliff, who lingered by the door, dividing his attention between the objects inside and those that lay without, pretending, that is, to observe the latter, and really noting the former alone. Heathcliff can do no wrong. This message is sponsored by the Heathcliff is totally rad and you're not foundation. That was totally not founded by Heathcliff himself. And funded by Heathcliff himself. And no one else works there but Heathcliff himself. And you are my uncle then, she cried, reaching up to salute him. I thought I liked you. I thought you were cross at first. Why don't you visit the Grange with Linton? To live all these years such a close neighbours and never see us. It's odd. What have you done so for? Heathcliff did a lot wrong. This message is sponsored by the Hindley Foundation, currently bankrupt. Oh, Kathy. I visited it once or twice, too often, before you were born, he answered. There, damn it. If you have any kisses to spare, give them to Linton. They are thrown away on me. Naughty Ellen, exclaimed Catherine, flying to attack me next with her lavish caress. Wicked Ellen, try hinder me from entering, but I'll take this walk every morning in the future. May I, Uncle, as I sometimes bring Papa? Won't you be glad to see us? Kathy! Kathy! Oh no! Oh no. Of course, replied the uncle, with a hardly suppressed grimace resulting from his deep aversion to the proposed visitors. But stay, he continued, turning towards the young lady. Now I think of it, I'd better tell you, Mr. Linton has a prejudice against me. We quarrelled at one time of our lives with unchristian ferocity, and if you mention coming here to him, he'll put a veto on your visits altogether. Therefore, you must not mention it, unless you be careless of seeing your cousin hereafter. You may come, if you will, but you must not mention it. Sweet innocent Kathy has an entire telenovella's worth of family drama to catch up. She does. But she's so happily innocent of it. Oh, do you know where telenovelas popped up in my life and I did not expect it whatsoever? Sonic 3. The third Sonic movie has a goofy telenovela in it that Eggman starts watching. Shadow Watch is a bit of a telenovela. It's great. Yes, there's a telenovela in Sonic 3. It's great. It's great. Eggman's been like sitting there watching telenovelas and getting fat, and that's how he got fat. Canon, that's how he gained his egg weight. Spoilers. Hopefully Kathy 2 don't make the same mistake for romance. Yeah, that was Isabella, but Kathy 1 also did have some terrible taste, to be fair. What a backstory, I know, right? Everyone loves telenovelas. Even Blue Beetle has telenovelas. Blue Beetle makes a little more sense for telenovela. But it came out of nowhere with Sonic, it's great. Why did you quarrel? Asked Catherine, considerably crestfallen. He thought me too poor to wed his sister, answered Heathcliff, and was grieved that I got her. His pride was hurt, and he'll never forgive it. I haven't seen them. Some of the Sonic movies have been great. They actually have been. There's moments in them that are so cringe, but you know that every kid in the room is gonna freaking love it. There's this bit, slight spoiler for the third one, but there's this bit that was absolutely delightful where it was Eggman and Grandpa Eggman trying to get through a laser grid, and they have a suit that will just reflect the lasers, so they have a little dance party in there, and it's just absolutely fucking glorious. The British only spices bad taste. That is not what happened, yeah. That's wrong, said the young lady. Sometime I'll tell him so, but Linton and I have no share in your quarrel. I'll not come here, then. He shall come to the Grange. It'll be too far for me, murmured her cousin. To walk 4 miles would kill me. No, come here, Miss Catherine. Now and then. Not every morning, but once or twice a week. The father launched towards his son a glance of bitter contempt. I'm afraid Nellie shall choose my labour, he muttered to me. Miss Catherine, as the ninny calls her, will discover his value and send him to the devil. Now, if it had been Hareton, do you know that 20 times a day I covert Hareton with all his degradation? I'd have loved the lad had he been someone else, but I think he's safe from her love. I'll pit him against that paltry creature, unless it bestir itself briskly. He calculated it would scarcely last till it is 18. Oh, confound the vapid thing. He's absorbed in drying his feet, and never looks at her. Linton. Yes, father. Have you nothing to show your cousin anywhere about? Not even a rabbit or a weasel nest? Take her into the garden before you change your shoes, and into the stable to see your horse. Wouldn't you rather sit here? He asked, addressing Kathy in a tone which expressed reluctance to move again. Mood. I don't know, she replied, casting a longing look to the door, and evidently eager to be active because this girl could not sit still. He kept his seat and shrank closer to the fire. Heathcliff rose and went to the kitchen, and from thence to the yard, calling for Hareton. Hareton responded presently. The two re-entered. The young man had been washing himself, was visible by the glow on his cheeks and his sweater. "Oh, I'll ask you, uncle," cried Miss Cathy, recollecting the housekeeper's assertion. "That is not my cousin, is he?" "Yes," he replied, "your mother's nephew. Don't you like him?" Catherine looked queer. "He is not a handsome lad." "God damn, woman! That's a Catherine. That's definitely a Catherine." The uncivil little thing stood on tiptoe and whispered a sentence in Heathcliff's ear. He laughed. Hareton darkened. I perceived he was very sensitive to suspected slights, and had obviously a dim notion of his inferiority. But his master or guardian chased the frown by exclaiming, "You'll be the favourite among us, Hareton. She says you are a... what was it? Tells... well, something very flattering. Here, you go with her round the farm, and behave like a gentleman, mind. Don't use any bad words, and don't stare when the young lady is not looking at you, and be ready to hide your face when she is. And when you speak, say your words slowly, and keep your hands out of your pockets. Be off, and entertain her as nicely as you can." He watched the couple walking past the window, unsure, and his countenance completely averted from his companion. He seemed studying the familiar landscape with a stranger's and an artist's interest. Catherine took a sly look at him, expressing small admiration. She then turned her attention to seeking out objects of amusement for herself, and tripped merrily on, littling a tune to supply the lack of conversation. "I've tied his tongue," observed Heathcliff. "He'll not venture a single syllable all the time. Nellie, did you recollect his age? Nay, some years younger. Did I ever look so stupid, so gormless as Joseph calls it?" No calling her a saucy wench, Hareton. Yes. Hareton, not wanting to be looked down on, sure is a Heathcliff move. Well, who's the one who truly raised this child? "I've a pleasure in him," he continued. "Worse," I replied, "because more sullen with it." "I've a pleasure in him," he continued, reflecting aloud. "He has satisfied my expectations. If he were born a fool, I should not enjoy it half so much. But he's no fool, and I can sympathise with his feelings, having felt them myself. I know what he suffers now, for instance, exactly. It is merely a beginning of what he shall suffer, suffer through, and he'll never be able to emerge from his bathos and coarseness and ignorance. I've got him faster than his scoundrel of a father secured me, and lower, for he takes a pride in his brutishness. I've taught him to scorn everything extra animal and silly and weak. Don't you think Hindley would be proud of his son if he could see him now? Almost as proud as I am of mine. But there's this difference. One is gold put to the use of paving stones, and the other is tin polished to ape a service of silver. Mine has nothing valuable about it. Yet I shall have the merit of making it go as far as such poor scuff can go. His had first-rate qualities, and they are lost, rendered worse than unravelling. I have nothing to regret. He would have more than any, but I are aware of it. And the best of it is, Hareton is damnably fond of me. You'll know that I've outmatched Hindley there, if the dead villain could rise from his grave to abuse me for his offspring's wrongs. I should have the fun of seeing the said offspring fight him back, again indignant that he should dare rail at the one friend he has in the world. Heathcliff, you were making yourself... I know, but Heathcliff's like, as he should. Like his father, as he should. How does Heathcliff get worse with every sentence? He really does. It's just so impressive. Heathcliff chuckled a fiendish laugh at the idea. I made no reply because I saw what he expected. I saw that he expected none. Meantime, our young companion, who sat too removed from us to hear what was said, began to evidence symptoms of uneasiness, probably repenting that he had denied himself the treat of Catherine's society for fear of a little fatigue. It's a talent at this point. Okay, bear with me. In the Legacy Star Wars canon, the Emperor was going to continue his life by possessing a Skywalker baby as a Force ghost. Heathcliff is doing that with the poor lad metaphorically. Kinda. In a roundabout way. His father remarked the restless glances wandering to the window, and the hand Iris extended towards his cap. "Get up, you idle boy!" he exclaimed with assumed hardiness. "Away after them! They are just at the corner, by the stand of hives." He'll be drinking the tears of Cathy again. The tears of unfathomable sadness. Ooh, they taste so yummy by the end of the book. Maybe, hopefully. Hopefully he has the blood of Heathcliff on his hands, too. He kind of deserves that one. Linton gathered his energies and left the path. The lattice was open, and he stepped out. I heard Cathy inquiring of her unsociable attendant what was the inscription over the door. Hareton stared up and scratched his head like a true clown. Oh, poor Hareton. Hareton doesn't deserve this. "Some damnable writing," he answered. "I cannot read it." Heathcliff, generation trauma shall become mandatory. "Can't read it," cried Catherine. "I can read it. It's English, but I want to know why it is there." Linton giggled, the first appearance of mirth he had exhibited. "He doesn't know his letters," he said to his cousin. "Could you believe in the existence of such a colossal dunce? Is he all as he should be? Asked Catherine seriously. Or is he simple? Not right? I've questioned him twice now, and each time he looked so stupid. I think he does not understand me. I can hardly understand him, I'm sure. Oh, how dare they bond over bullying. Linton repeated his laugh and glanced at Hareton tauntingly, who certainly did not seem quite clear of the comprehension at that moment. There's nothing the matter but laziness, is there, Earnshaw? He said. My cousin fancies you are an idiot. There you experience the consequences of scorning book learning, as you would say. Have you noticed? Catherine is his frightfully Yorkshire pronunciation. Yeah, they are the upper class, and he sounds like the lower class. Why, where the devil is the use on it? Why, where the devil's the use on it? Growled Hareton, more ready in answering his daily companion. He was about to enlarge further, but the two youngsters broke into a noisy fit of merriment. My giddy miss, being delighted to discover she might turn his stranger talk into a matter of amusement. Where is the use of the devil in that sentence? Tittered Lytton. Papa told me not to say any bad words, and you can't open your mouth without one. Do try to behave like a gentleman now, do you? Now? Do try to behave like a gentleman, now do. Unfathomable horror of a Yorkshire accent. The peasant's accent. If that weren't more lass than a lad, I'd fell thee this minute. I but pitiful lath of a crater, retorted the angry boar, retreating while his face burned with mingled rage and mortification. He was conscious of being insulted and embarrassed how to resent it. Mr. Heathcliff, having overheard the conversation as well as I, smiled when he saw him go, but immediately afterwards cast a look of singular aversion on the flippant pair who remained chattering in the doorway. The boy, finding animation enough while discussing Hareton's faults and deficiencies and relating anecdotes of his goings-on, and the girl relishing his pert and spiteful sayings without considering the ill nature they had evidence of. I began to dislike more than to compassionate Linton, and to his father in some measure for holding him cheap. We stayed till afternoon. I could not tear Miss Cathy away sooner, but happily my master had not quitted his apartment, and remained ignorant of our prolonged absence. As we walked home, I would fain have enlightened my charge on the characters of the people we had quitted, but she got it into her head that I was just prejudiced against them. Aha! She cried, you take Papa's side, Ellen. You are partial, I know, or else you wouldn't have cheated on me so many years into the notion that Linton lived a long way from here. I'm really extremely angry, only I'm so pleased I can't show it. But you must hold your tongue about my uncle. He's my uncle, remember, and I'll scold Papa for quarrelling with him. Oh God. Oh God. I mean, after listening to Joseph, I've developed a pathological fear of Yorkshire. Yorkshire's massive too, as well, you know. And so she ran on, till I relinquished the endeavour to convince her of her mistake. And she did not mention the visit that night, because she did not see Mr. Linton. Next day it all came out, sadly to my chagrin, and still I was not altogether sorry, though I thought the burden of directing and warning could be more efficiently borne by him than me, but he was too timid in giving satisfactory reasons for his wish that she should shun connection with the household of the Heights, and Catherine liked good reasons for every restraint that harassed her petted will. "Papa!" she exclaimed after the morning salutations. "Guess whom I saw yesterday in my walk on the moors? Ah, Papa, you started. You've not done right, have you now? I saw, but listen, and you shall hear how I found out. And Ellen, who is in league with you, and yet pretend to pity me so, when I kept hoping, and was always disappointed about Linton's coming back." She gave a faithful account of her excursion and its consequences, and my master, though he cast more than one reproachful look at me, said nothing till she had concluded. Then he drew her near him and asked if she knew why he had concealed Linton's near neighbour from her. Could she think it was to deny her pleasure that she might harmlessly enjoy? "It was because you disliked Mr. Heathcliff," she answered. "Then you believe I care more for my own feelings than yours, Cathy?" He said, "No, it was not because I disliked Mr. Heathcliff, but because Mr. Heathcliff dislikes me, and he is a most diabolical man, delighting to wrong and ruins those he hates. If they give him the slightest opportunity, I know that you could not keep up an acquaintance with your cousin without being brought into contact with him, and I knew he would detest you on my account. So, for your own good, and nothing else, I took precautions that you should not see Linton again. I meant to explain this at some time as you grew older. I am sorry I delayed it." "But Mr. Heathcliff was quite cordial, Papa," observed Catherine, not at all convinced, "and he didn't object to our seeing each other. He said I might come to his house whenever I pleased. Only I must not tell you, because you had quarrelled with him, and would not forgive him for marrying Aunt Isabella, and you won't. You are the one to be blamed. He is willing to let us be friends, at least, Linton and I, and you're not." My master, perceiving that she would not take his word for her uncle-in-law's evil disposition, gave a hasty sketch of his conduct to Isabella, and the manner in which Wuthering Heights became his property. He could not bear to discourse upon the topic, for, though he spoke little of it, he still felt the same horror and distinction of his ancient enemy that had occupied his heart ever since Mr. Linton's death. She might have been living yet, if it had not been for him, was his constant bitter reflection, and in his eyes Heathcliff schemed a murderer. Miss Cathy, conversant with no bad deeds except her own slight acts of disobedience, injustice, and passion, arising from hot temper and thoughtlessness, and repented on the day were committed, was amazed at the blackness of spirit that could brood on and covet revenge for years, and deliberately prosecute his plans without a visitation of remorse. She appeared so deeply impressed and shocked at this new view of human nature, excluded from all her studies and all her ideas till now, that Mr. Edgar deemed it unnecessary to pursue the subject, that he merely added, "You will know hereafter, darling, why I wish you to avoid his house and family. Now return to your old employments and amusements, and think no more about them." Hello, Scarlet Silver Iron. There's a reason why people think this is a vampire book. That's an interesting take. I mean, he uses the word sanguine a lot, which tends to be used with vampires a lot. But I wouldn't go so far as to call it a vampire book. Catherine kissed her father and sat down quietly to her lesson for a couple of hours, according to custom. Then she accompanied him into the grounds. The whole day passed as usual, but in the evening, when she had retired to her room, and I went to help her to undress, I found her crying on her knees by her bedside. "Oh, Fee, silly child," I exclaimed. "If you had any real griefs, you'd be ashamed to waste a tear on this contrariety." Vampire's looking at Heathcliff like he's not with us. We're not psychos. "You never had one shadow of substantial sorrow, Miss Catherine. Suppose for a minute that Master and I were dead, and you were by yourself in the world. How would you feel then? Compare the present occasion with such an affliction as that, and be thankful for the friends you have, instead of coveting more." "I'm not crying for myself, Ellen," she answered. "It's for him. He expected to see me again tomorrow, and there he'll be so disappointed. He'll wait for me and I shan't come." "Nonsense," said I. "Do you imagine he has thought as much of you as you have of him? Hasn't he Hareton for a companion? Not 1 in 100 would weep at losing a relation they had seen twice for 2 afternoons. Linton will conjecture how it is, and trouble himself no further about you." "But may I not write a note and tell him why I cannot come?" she asked, rising to her feet. "And just send those books I promised to lend him. His books are not as nice as mine, and he wanted to have them extremely when I told him how interesting they were. May I not, Ellen?" No, indeed," replied I with decision. "Then he would write to you, and there'd never be an end of it. No, Miss Catherine, the acquaintance must be dropped entirely, so Papa expects I shall see that it is done." "But how can one will know?" she recommenced, putting an imploring countenance. "Silence!" I interrupted. "We'll not begin with your little notes. Get into bed." She threw at me a very naughty look, so naughty that I would not kiss her for good night at first. I covered her up and shut the door in great displeasure, but, repenting halfway, I returned softly, and lo, there was Miss standing at the table, with a blank paper before her and a pencil in her hand, which she guiltily slipped out of sight on my entrance. 2 seconds! She was in the bed 2 seconds and then suddenly at her writing table. That's such a kid thing to do. Reminds me of when I got caught looking at my stocking early at Christmas. My parents had just gone to bed and just put the stockings in our rooms. And I heard them, so I decided to get up and have a look, but they caught me! So we started Christmas really, really early and my parents got no sleep. Yay! "You'll get nobody to take that, Catherine," I said, "if you write it, and at present I shall put out your candle." I set the extinguisher on the flame, receiving, as I did, a slap on my hand and a petulant "cross thing!" I then quitted her again. She drew the bolt in one of her worst, most peevish humours. The letter was finished and forwarded to its destination by a milk fetcher who came from the village. But that I didn't learn until some time afterwards. Weeks passed on, and Cathy recovered her temper, though she grew wondrous fond of stealing off to the corners by herself, and often I came near her suddenly while reading. She would start and bend over the book, evidently desirous to hide it. She's her mother's daughter, she is. She's also 16, like she's old enough now, really, to have a good head on her shoulders, and not old enough to be an adult, not old enough to marry, not old enough to really know what's going on, but old enough that she's getting there. She's getting there to start scheming by herself. And I detected edges of loose paper sticking out beyond the leaves. She also got a trick of coming down early in the morning and lingering about the kitchen as if she were expecting the arrival of something. Sheltered child. She is so sheltered. She's a baby. A baby! And she had a small drawer in a cabinet in the library, which she would trifle over for hours, and whose key she took special care to remove when she left it. One day, as she inspected this drawer, I observed that the playthings and trinkets which recently formed its contents were transmuted into bits of folded paper. My curiosity and suspicions were roused. I determined to take a peep at her mysterious treasures, so at night, as soon as she and my master were safe upstairs, I searched readily and found among my house keys one that would fit the lock. Having opened it, I emptied the whole contents into my apron and took them with me to examine at leisure in my own chamber. I thought, though I could not but suspect, it was still surprised to discover that they were a mass of correspondence, daily almost. It must have been from Linton Heathcliff. Answers to documents forwarded by her. The earlier dated were embarrassed and short. Gradually, however, they expanded into copious love letters, foolish as the age of the writer rendered natural. Copious love letters by really cringe teenagers. Yet with touches here and there which I thought were borrowed from more experienced sources. Some of them struck me as singularly odd compounds of ardour and flatness, commencing in strong feelings and concluding in the affected, worldly style that a schoolboy might use to a fancied, incorporeal sweetheart. Whether they satisfied Cathy, I don't know, but they appeared very worthless trash to me. After turning over as many as I thought proper, I tied them in a handkerchief and set them aside, relocking the vacant drawer. Following her habit, my young lady descended early and visited the kitchen. I watched her go to the door on the arrival of a certain little boy, and while the dairymaid filled his cans, she tucked something into his jacket pocket and plucked something out. I went round by the garden and laid wait for the messenger, who fought valorously to defend his trust, and we split the milk between us. But I succeeded in abstracting the still and threatening serious consequences if he did not look sharp home. I remained under the wall and pursued Miss Cathy's affectionate composition. It was more simple, more eloquent than her cousin's, very pretty and very silly. I shook my head and went meditating into the house. The day being wet, she could not divert herself with ramblings about the park, so at the conclusion of her morning studies, she resorted to the solace of the drawer. Her father sat reading at the table, and I, on purpose, had sought a bit of work in some unripened fringes of the window curtain, keeping an eye steadily fixed on her proceedings. Never did any bird flying back to a plundering nest which had left brimming full of chirping young ones express more complete despair in its anguished cries and fluttering than she by her single "oh," and the change that transfigured her late happy countenance. Mr. Linton looked up. "What is the matter, love? Have you hurt yourself?" he said. His tone and look assured her he had not been the discoverer of the hoard. No, Papa, she gasped. Ellen, come upstairs, I'm sick. Ellen! Ellen! I obeyed her summons and accompanied her out. Oh, Ellen, you have got them! She commenced immediately, dropping on her knees when we were enclosed alone. Oh, give them to me, and I'll never do it again. Don't tell Papa. You have not told Papa, Ellen. Say you have not. I've been exceedingly naughty, and I won't do it anymore. Liar, liar, pants on fire. With grave severity in my manner, I bade her stand up. So, I exclaimed, Miss Catherine, you are tolerably far on. It seems you may have been ashamed of them. A fine bundle of trash you study in your leisure. Ours, to be sure. Why, it's good enough to be printed. And what do you suppose the master will think when I display it before him? I haven't shown him yet, but you needn't imagine I shall keep your ridiculous secrets. For shame! And you must have led the way in writing such absurdities. He would not have thought of beginning, I'm certain. I didn't! Sobbed Kathy, fit to break her heart. I didn't once think of loving him till... Loving? Cried I, as scornfully as I could utter the word. Loving? Did anybody even hear the like? I might as well take talk of loving the miller who comes once a year to buy our corn. Pretty loving indeed. And both times together you have seen Linton hardly 4 hours in your life. Now here is the babyish trash. I'm going with it to the library, and we'll see what your father says of such loving. She sprang at her precious epistles, but I held them above her head. And then she poured out further frantic entreaties that I would burn them, do anything rather than show them, and being really fully as much inclined to laugh as scold, for I esteemed it all girlish vanity, I at length relented in a measure and asked, if I consent to burn them, will you promise faithfully neither to send nor receive a letter again, nor a book, for I perceive you have sent him books, nor locks of hair, nor rings, nor playthings? We don't send playthings, cried Catherine, her pride overcoming her shame. Heathcliff as an English teacher would be scary. Heathcliff as a teacher? You know, most parents seeing their child write love letters would go, how sweet. Heathcliff instead judges it like an English writer. Oh, yeah. I promise, Ellen, she cried, catching my dress. Oh, put them in the fire, do! But when I proceeded to open a place with the poker, the sacrifice was too painful to be borne. She earnestly supplicated that I would spare her 1 or 2. 1 or 2, Ellen, to keep for Linton's sake, please. I unknotted the handkerchief and commenced dropping them from an angle, and the flame curled up the chimney. I will have one, you cruel wretch, she screamed, darting her hand into the fire and drawing forth some half-consumed fragments at the expense of her fingers. Very well, and I shall have some exhibit to Papa, I answered, shaking back the rest of the bundle and turning anew to the door. She emptied her blackened pieces into the flame and motioned me to finish the immolation. It was done. I stirred up the ashes and interned them under a shovelful of coals. And she mutely, and with a sense of intense injury, retired to her private apartment. I descended to tell my master that the young lady's qualm of sickness was almost gone, but I judged it best for her to lie down a while. She wouldn't dine, but she reappeared at tea, pale and red, with about her eyes. Aww, a little bit of teenage heartbreak. And marvellously subdued in outward aspect. Next morning, I answered the letter by slip of paper, inscribed, Master Heathcliff is requested to send no more notes to Miss Linton, as she will not receive them. And henceforth, the little boy came with vacant pockets. That dairy boy was probably making a mint out of that. He's probably, goddamn, how dare they? Because she was slipping something into his pockets. I hope Heathcliff was paying him a bit extra and he was making a bit on the side for that. I really do. Or Heathcliff just threatened him. You know, one or the other. Hide away, son. Okay. Chapter 22. Summer drew to an end, an early autumn. It was past Michaelmas? That was a thing once upon a time. What was Michaelmas? I want to look that up. Michaelmas. Is that what they used to call Christmas? Michaelmas. A Christian festival observed in many Western Christian calendars on the 29th of September and on the 8th of November for Eastern Christian traditions. Okay. What do we do for Michaelmas? How do we honor the Michael? Has been, oh, so it's like a soul, like the turn of the seasons kind of thing. Interesting. But the harvest was late that year, and a few of our fields were still uncleared. Mr. Linton and his daughter would frequently walk out among the reapers and the carrying of the last sheaves that they stayed till dusk, and the evening happening to be chill and damp, my master caught a bad cold that settled obstinately on his lungs and confined him indoors throughout the whole of the winter, nearly without intermission. Poor Cathy, frightened from her little romance, had been considerably sadder and duller since its abandonment, and her father insisted on her reading less and taking more exercise. She had his companionship no longer. I esteemed it a duty to supply its lack as much as possible with mine, an insufficient substitute, for I could only spare 2 or 3 hours from my numerous endural occupations to follow her footsteps, and then my society was obviously less desirable than his. On an afternoon in October or the beginning of November, a fresh, watery afternoon when the turf and paths were rustling with moist, wet, withered leaves, and the cold blue sky was half hidden by clouds, dark grey streams rapidly mounting from the west and boding abundant rain. I requested my young lady to forego her ramble because I was certain of showers. She refused, and I unwillingly donned a cloak and took my umbrella to accompany her on a stroll to the bottom of the park. A formal walk which she generally affected if low spirits, and that she invariably was when Mr. Edgar had been worse than ordinary, a thing never known from his confession, but guessed both by her and me from his increased silence and the melancholy of his countenance. She went sadly on. There was no running or bounding now, though the chill wind might well have tempted her to race, and often from the side of my eye I could detect her raising a hand and brushing something off her cheek. I gazed round for means of diverting her thoughts. On one side of the road rose a high, rough bank, where hazels and stunted oaks, with their roots half exposed, held uncertain tenure. The soil was too loose for the latter, and strong winds had blown some nearly horizontal. In summer, Miss Catherine delighted to climb along these trunks and sit in the branches, swinging 20 feet above the ground, and I, pleased with her agility and her light, childish heart, still considered it proper to scold every time I caught her at such an elevation, but so that she knew there was no necessity for descending. From dinner to tea she would lie in her breeze-rocked cradle, doing nothing except singing old songs, my nursery lore, to herself, or watching the birds, joint tenants, feed and entice their young ones to fly, or nestling with closed lids, half thinking, half dreaming, happier than words can express. "Look, miss," I exclaimed, pointing to a nook under the roots of one twisted tree. "Winter is not here yet. There's a little flower up yonder, the last bud from the multitude of bluebells that clouded the turf steps in July with a lilac mist. Will you clamber up and pluck it to show Papa?" Cathy stared a long time at the lonely blossom trembling in its earthly shelter. I replied at length, "No, I shall not touch it. But it looks melancholy, does it not, Ellen? I am suffering from teenage angst today. I am worried about my father dying, which is kind of understandable." "Yes," I observed, "about as starved and shackleless as you. Your cheeks are bloodless. Let us take hold, hands, and run. You're so low, I dare say I shan't keep up with you." "No," she repeated, and continued sauntering on, pausing at intervals to muse over a bit of moss, or a tuft of blanched grass, or a fungus spreading its bright orange among the heaps of brown foliage, and ever and anon her hands was lifted to her averted face. "Catherine, why are you crying, my love?" I asked, approaching and putting my arm over her shoulder. "You mustn't cry because Papa has a cold. Be thankful it's nothing worse." She now put no further restraint on her tears. Her breath was stifled by sobs. "Oh, it will be something worse," she said. "And what shall I do when Papa and you leave me, and I am by myself? I can't forget your words, Ellen. They are always in my ear. How will life be changed? How dreary the world will be when Papa and you are dead." "None can tell whether you are going to die before us," I replied. "It's wrong to anticipate evil. We'll hope there are years and years to come before any of us go. Master is young, and I am strong, and hardly 45. My mother lived till 80. I canty down to the last. And suppose Mr. Linton were spared till he saw 60, and that would be more years than you have counted, miss. And would it not be foolish to mourn a calamity above 20 years beforehand?" "But Aunt Isabella was younger than Papa," she remarked, gazing up with timid hope to seek further consolation. "Aunt Isabella had not you and me to nurse her," I replied. "She wasn't happy as master. She hadn't as much to live for. All you need to do is wait well on your father and cheer him by letting him see you cheerful, and avoid giving him anxiety on any subject. Mind that, Cathy. I'll not disguise, but you might kill him if you were wild and reckless and cherished a foolish, fanciful affection for the son of a person who would be glad to have him in his grave, and allowed him to discover that you fretted over the separation he had judged expedient to make. I fret about nothing on earth except Papa's illness, answered my companion. I care for nothing in comparison with Papa, and I'll never, while I have my senses, do an act or say a word to vex him. I love him better than myself, Ellen, and I know it by this. I pray every night that I may live after him, because I would rather be miserable than that he should be. That proves I love him better than myself. Good words, I replied, but deeds must prove it also, and after he is well, remember you don't forget resolutions formed in an hour of fear. A lot of people like that. Oh, everything's fine now. I can not care about Papa again. As we talked near a door that opened on the road, and my young lady, lightened to sunshine again, climbed up and seated herself atop the wall, reaching over to gather some hips that bloomed scarlet on the summit branches of the wild rose trees shadowing the highway side. The lower fruit had disappeared, but only birds could touch the upper except from Kathy's present station. I believe that sound was my mic stand. My little mic arm. In stretching to pull them, her hat fell off, and the door was locked. She proposed scrambling down to recover it. I bid her be cautious lest she got fall, and she nimbly disappeared. But the return was no such easy matter. The stones were smooth and neatly cemented, and the rose bushes, blackberry stragglers, could yield no assistance in reascending. I, like a fool, didn't recollect that till I heard her laughing and exclaiming, "Ellen, you'll have to fetch the key, or else I must run around the porter's lodge. I can't scale the ramparts on this side." Brand new desk. Hello, Flowerheart, welcome. Stay where you are, I answered. I have my bundle of keys in my pocket. Perhaps I may manage to open it. If not, I'll go. You gave yourself a reading list? Wuthering Heights is on it? And you have already finished it. Well done, Flowerheart. Do not give us spoilers. Catherine amused herself. Now you're on Don Quixote. Cool! Catherine amused herself with dancing to and fro before the door, while I tried all the large keys in succession. I had applied the last and found that none would do, so repeating my desire that she would remain there, I was about to hurry home as fast as I could, when an approaching sound arrested me. It was the trot of a horse. Kathy's dance stopped also. "Who is that?" I whispered. "Ellen, I wish you could open the door," whispered back my companion anxiously. No, you don't have to give me the reading list. This is fine. "Ho, Miss Linton," cried a deeper voice, the rider's. "I'm glad to meet you. Don't be in haste to enter, for I have an explanation to ask and obtain." "I shan't speak to you, Mr. Heathcliff," answered Catherine. "Papa says you are a wicked man, and you hate both him and me, and Ellen says the same." "That is nothing to the purpose," said Heathcliff. It was. I don't hate my son, I suppose, and it is concerning him that I demand your attention. Yes, you have cause to blush 2 or 3 months since were you not in the habit of writing to Linton, making love and play, You deserve, both of you, flogging for that. You especially, the elder and less sensitive. As it turns out, I've got your letters, and if you give me any pertness, I shall send them to your father. I presume you grow weary of the amusement and dropped it, didn't you? Well, you dropped Linton with it into a slough of despond. He was in earnest in love, really. As true as live, he's dying for you, breaking his heart at your fickleness, not figuratively but actually, though Hareton has made him a standing jest for 6 weeks. I have used more serious measures and attempted to frighten him out of his idiocy. He gets worse daily, and he'll be under the sod before summer unless you can restore him. Toxic. Not that this whole thing hasn't been toxic. Oh yeah, emotional manipulation on a child. Yay! More toxic relationships. Yay! Oh, if you join my Discord, Flowerheart, there is a normal-sized phantom that has 3 of the Wuthering Heights movies, and they're doing research. Also, 2 gacha games. Yeah, you're probably talking Limbus. Has a reference to Wuthering Heights. I don't know about the second gacha game. Obviously, there's Wuthering Waves, but that has nothing to do with Wuthering Heights. So many toxic relationships in Wuthering Heights, spot of common nuclear power plant. Yes! I was not aware there were eavesdroppers. How can you lie so glaringly to a poor child? I called from the inside. Pray right on. How can you deliberately get up such paltry falsehoods? Miss Cathy, I'll knock the lock off with a stone. You won't believe that vile nonsense. You can feel in yourself it is impossible that a person should die for love of a stranger. Second one is Sid's story. Oh, okay. Since when did you know about Limbus? I know about Limbus because I've been playing Library of Ruina for the past 2 years. We're nearly end. I'm gonna finish it after Christmas and it'll be great. Finally, after so long. I haven't played Limbus yet though. I'm waiting to finish Ruina before I get into Limbus, so I don't actually know that much about Limbus. I was not aware there were eavesdroppers, muttered the detected villain. Worthy Miss Dean, I like you, but I don't like your double-dealing. He added, how could you lie so glaringly as to affirm I hate the poor child? I invented bugbear stories to terrify her from my doorstones. Catherine Linton,
new donation from Rare Candy Guy.
My
hey Bryony, before I go, just wanted to drop this.
Home all week.
Thanks for doing your awesome work and writing.
Rare Candy Guy, hey Bryony, before I go, I just
around.
wanted to drop this.
40.
Thanks for doing your awesome work and writing. Have a good Christmas. Thank you so much, Rare Candy Guy. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and a happy new year. Oh my god. Thank you for the Christmas present. You're the best. Yay. 10 out of 10. Happy. I wish this could show clapping, but it doesn't. But I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Yay. I found Wuthering Heights out there in center of the zone, truly toxic concentration. Could only be an anomaly from my fellow stalkers. I shall be from home all this week. I'd go and see if I have not spoken truth. Do, there's a darling. Just imagine your father in my place, and Linton in yours. Then think, how you would have your careless lover if he refused to stir a step to comfort you, when your father himself entreated him. And don't, from pure stupidity, fall into the same error. I swear on my salvation, he's going to his grave, and none but you shall save him. The lock gave way, and I issued out. I swear Linton is dying, repeated Heathcliff, looking hard at me. And grief and disappointment are hastening his death. Nelly, if you won't go, let her go. You can walk over yourself. I shall not return till this time next week. I think your master himself would scarcely object to her visiting her cousin. I have a bit complicated relationship with Limbus since Project Moon has some labour issues. So I'm feeding my fixation with book reading instead. Good idea! Good idea. Labour issues. What's the labour issues? Oh no. Are they bad? Are they bad employers? Oh no. But I shall not return to this. Come in, I said, taking Cathy by the arm and half forcing her to re-enter, for she lingered, viewing with troubled eyes the features of the speaker. I'm not going to elaborate, or I will have an OCD spiral again. Fair enough, Flower, fair enough. You do what you need to do to keep your brain in the bestest of places. She lingered, viewing troubled eyes, the features of the speaker, too stern to express his inward deceit. He pushed his horse close and bending down observed, Miss Catherine, I'll owe you that I have little patience with Linton, and Hareton and Joseph have less. I'll own that he's with a harsh set. He pines for kindness as well as love, and a kind word from you would be his best medicine. Don't mind Mrs. Dean's cruel cautions, and be generous, and contrive to see him. He dreams of you day and night, and cannot be persuaded that you don't hate him, since you neither write nor call. Just don't give. I'm very good at not spending money on gachas, so we're good. I closed the door and rolled a stone to assist the loosening lock in my holding it, and spreading my umbrella, I drew my charge underneath it, for the rain began to drive through the moaning branches of the trees, and warned us to avoid delay. Our hurry prevented any comment on the encounter with Heathcliff, as we stretched towards home. But I divined instinctively that Catherine's heart was clouded now in double darkness. Her features were so sad, they did not seem hers. She evidently regarded what she had heard as every syllable true. The master had retired to rest before we came in. Cathy stole to his room to inquire how he was. He had fallen asleep. She returned and asked me to sit with her in the library. Thank you for the flower. Appreciate it. We took our tea together, and afterwards she lay down on the rug and told me not to talk, for she was very weary. I got a book and pretended to read. As soon as she supposed me absorbed in my occupation, she recompensed her silent weeping. Poor girl. She's just so sheltered. She was worried enough about her dad, and now she's told that another life rests on her. Ugh, Heathcliff's a nasty, nasty man. It appeared at present her favourite diversion. I suffered her to enjoy it a while, when I expulted deriding and ridiculing all Heathcliff's assertions about his son, as if I was certain she would concede. Alas, I hadn't the skill to counteract the effect his account had produced. It was just what he intended. "You may be right, Helen," she answered, "but I shall never feel at ease till I know. And I must tell Linton it is not my fault that I don't write. I convince him that I shall not change." What use were anger and protestations against her silly credulity? We parted that night hostile, but next day beheld me on the road to Wuthering Heights, by the side of my wilful young mistress's pony. I couldn't bear witness to her sorrow, to see her pale, dejected countenance and heavy eyes, and I yielded, in the faint hope that Linton himself might prove, by his reception of us, how little the tale was founded on fact. Chapter 23. And unfortunately, the end of the stream. Just have to drink. Thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much for your kofi. Thank you everyone for chatting. Thank you anyone who looked. Thank you anyone who watches the VOD. I really appreciate you coming and enjoying. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and a happy new year, because I will be... Do I like the book? Yes. It's... You just don't know where it's going with these guys. I really can't predict what's going to happen with it, because... Drama. Peak drama in this book. It's crazy. Also, the best way I describe my feelings about this book is, you know, the wolf in sheep's clothing did. Yes. I don't want a wonderful Christmas. I want an actual wonderful Christmas. I don't want a wuthering Christmas. If you have not already, if you're on YouTube, if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, that would be wonderful. If you're on Twitch, if you give the channel a cheeky follow, that would also be wonderful. If you would like to be like the wonderful, the bestest rare candy guy and give me a Christmas present, you can do it in many ways. You can do it via Patreon, where I get the list of things you get from the Patreon out, because I can never remember it off the top of my head, which is why I'm bad at marketing. Yay! Patreon, where you get short stories, exclusive streams, merch discounts, and free ebooks. Did I do a December exclusive? Yes, I did. Yes, I did. We did the playtest. I remember now. There's also YouTube membership, where you get emotes, exclusive streams, Discord channel, and free and merch discounts. There's the Kofi, where you don't really get anything if you subscribe, but I really appreciate it. There is audiobooks in the shop, and there is also a way to commission me. If you like my emotes, we can make more for money. And last but not least, my merch store is now open to anyone outside of the EU, where you can get ebooks, first edition copies of books that I've written, and I think a notebook and a pillow. All the other stuff may be coming back, but may be limited time. I'd like to sort of do maybe a seasonal change in my merch store every so often, so we'll call what's in there like the winter merch. But it's always going to have the ebooks in, I think, at the very least. Ebooks and physical books will always be in there. I do always want to sell my books. Hey, you want to read more books? You should buy more books from my website, www.bridewestmith.co.uk. That's it. That's all I got for you. Deck the halls with lots of money, please give me money. No, you enjoy your Christmases, everyone. Have a great time. May you get all the presents that you want. May you not have Heathcliffs in your life. And if you don't get the presents that you want, may you buy yourself the present that you want in the sales after Christmas. That's also just as important. Make sure to treat yourself, eat tasty things, and have a good time. Watch some cheesy movies. I'll be doing all this. And you got a Bo Fury as a recommendation. Bo Fury is great. You should definitely read Bo Fury. Thank you so much. Why do I have two alerts? I don't know. Thank you so much, Normal Size Phantom. Thank you, Red Candy Guy, for my wonderful Christmas gifts. I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas. I really do. Remember to put your Heathcliff repellent charms off if you want a quiet winter. Yes. Is anyone named Catherine here? No, I think you should be safe if you're not meant. I think I've only known one Catherine in my whole life. And I don't know. I haven't seen them since high school, so I think we're safe. I don't know any Catherines. You guys aren't any Catherines as far as I know. If not, definitely get your Heathcliff repellent charms up. It's very important for your safety and everyone else's. But I do have to say goodbye now. I almost don't want to. Like I said, I'm gonna be taking a break during Christmas, during the next week, because my IRL big work closes over Christmas, so I thought it's a good time if I stop streaming as well, I get like a full ass break. But at the same time, I almost don't want it because streaming is fun. But I could do with the break. But I'll see you guys. Yeah, I will see you guys. When I will be back, I'm unsure because the weeks are really awkward. I don't know whether I'll come back on the Monday the 30th, then skip Tuesday, then come back on the Thursday, because there's no way I'm streaming Tuesday. I'll be too busy, you know, drinking and having friendships. But then I'll be back on the Thursday, maybe. We'll see. I'm either going to be back on the 30th or I'm going to be back on the 2nd. I don't know which yet. We'll find out when we get there. I'll let you guys know as soon as I've made a decision. The fact that Gordon Brown once compared himself to Heathcliff is hilarious. That is the biggest red flag I've ever seen. If anyone ever compares himself to Gordon Brown, red flag. Red flag. Red flag. Red flag guy in TikTok. Ooh, red flag. Oh, never go out with someone who compares himself to Heathcliff. Anyway, after that wonderful pearl of knowledge, I would like to say I had fun. I hope you had fun. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year to everyone. This has been Brony Smith, live in the Forbidden Library.